It's 7 o'clock. Why don't we get going? And hopefully Mary will join us. Good evening. It's 7 p.m. My name is Bob Connors. I'm the chairman of the Newbury Conservation Commission. I'd like to call the October 4th meeting to order. Sam, can you read the remote open meeting law preamble and take a roll call vote of members present?
Ken and Mary just came in.
Oh, great. That's great.
All right. So as a preliminary matter, my name is Samantha Holt, and I am the town staff conservation agent for the Newbury Conservation Commission. Permit me to confirm that all members are present and can hear me. Conservation Commission members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Bob Connors?
Yes, present.
Mary Rimmer?
Yes, here.
Peter Pecos?
Yes.
Brad Duffin?
Present.
Dan Streeter?
Yes.
Diane O'Brien?
Yes.
And TJ Conti.
Yes.
All right. Good evening. This October 4th, 2022 open meeting of the Newbury Conservation Commission is being conducted remotely consistent with the act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, which extends the governor's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law until March 31st, 2022. This order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location and allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that attendees are participating by video and/or telephone conference, and the recording will be available on the Newbury Access YouTube channel. Meeting materials were provided to the commission members prior to the meeting for review and were posted to the Conservation Commission webpage for public access. Applicants or their representatives may be called upon to speak, and if needed, share information to the screen. Please state your attention after you've been called. Before we turn to the first item on the agenda, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. The chair will introduce each speaker on the agenda, who will be afforded 10 minutes to present their projects, more at the discretion of the chair. After speakers conclude their remarks, we will go down the list of commission members, inviting each by name to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. And further, for all attendees except commission members and staff, please remember to mute your computer using the mute button or your phone using *6 to toggle mute and unmute when you are not speaking. Please use earbuds or earphones with tablets and cell phones. Please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. Please be aware that video participants can see you and that you should take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. For any response, please wait until the floor is yielded to you and state your name before speaking. If commission members wish to engage in discussion with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself when you wish to speak. There will be an opportunity for public comment and questions during public hearings. After commission members have spoken, we will afford the public an opportunity to comment and/or ask questions as follows. I will see questions and comments through the Zoom raised hand function. Video conference participants, to raise your hand, hover over the bottom of the Zoom window below the photo gallery and click on the yellow hand that appears. If you do not see a yellow hand, click on the participants button. A list of participants will open and display on the right. At the bottom of this participant area, you will see an option to click on the raise hand button. Please ensure your name is fully and correctly displayed on the participant list. You may rename yourself by using the more function next to your name. For telephone participants, to raise your hand in a Zoom meeting, hit *9 on your phone's keypad. We will then afford members of the public who have raised their hands 3 minutes, more at the discretion of the chair, to ask questions and make comments in the order in which they are listed, which is determined by the order in which people click on the raised hand function. Each participant will be called on to provide their name and address and then ask a question or make a comment. We will afford the proponent the opportunity to reply. Your hand will be lowered when you have been given the floor for your questions. We will then continue down the list of those in the raised hand column and again afford the proponent an opportunity to respond. Please note that the chat feature has been disabled for this meeting. Please also note that everyone is expected to conduct themselves in the same manner they would at an in-person meeting. Any disruptions will be addressed once by the chair and should be acknowledged by the disruptor. Any further disruptions will result in complete removal from the meeting with no readmittance. Vulgar or obscene actions or comments will result in immediate removal from the meeting with no readmittance. And finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call vote. Oh boy, that one was tough.
Well, thank you, Sam. Okay, so Before we get into the first couple of agenda items, our upcoming meeting dates are October 18th, November 1st, and November 15th. All right, so the first matter before the commission are two items, certificates of compliance. First one is 11 Exeter Way, a request for a complete certificate for work to construct a new deck. Sam, could you give us a quick project overview? It sounds like this has already been complete and they just want the final sign off.
Yes, yeah. So this one, you guys might recall it, it was done very, very recently. They were looking to construct a new deck and a set of stairs. They've completed the project. I went out and did an inspection for it last week and everything was done perfectly.
Okay. Is anyone here for the applicant to speak?
I do not see any of them.
Okay, great. All right, any questions from the members? Mary, any questions?
No questions.
Thank you, Mary. Brad, any questions?
No, thank you.
Dan,
None.
TJ,
Nope.
Pete,
Nope.
Diane,
No,
and the chair has no questions. All right, what's our pleasure, team? Do we have a motion to issue a negative determination? I'm getting ahead of myself. Do we have a motion to issue a certificate of compliance?
So moved.
Okay, do we have a second?
second.
Okay, any further discussion?
No.
Hearing none, I'll call a roll call vote. Mary,
Yes,
Brad,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
TJ,
Yes.
Pete,
Yes.
Diane,
Yes,
and the chair votes yes. All right. Okay, next order of business is 164 Boston Road, a request for a complete certificate for work to replace the septic system. Sam, I take it's the same thing. It's complete. You've inspected it. I'm trying to reduce your comments so you can save your voice for when we really need you.
Thank you. Yeah,
Everything's
this one's
good?
all set as well. And Martha is here. I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
I don't, thank you, but I'm happy to answer any questions that the commissioners might have.
No, I think if Sam's happy, I'm certainly happy. All right, any questions from the members? Mary, any questions from Martha?
none.
Thank you. Brad, any questions?
No, good, thank you.
Dan, any questions?
Nope.
TJ,
No questions.
Pete?
I feel like I should ask something, but no.
Yeah. Diane, any questions?
keep it rolling. Nope.
Okay, and I have no questions. Thank you. Right, do we have a motion to issue a certificate of compliance?
So moved.
Or a
Second.
second? All right,
Second.
any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Roll call vote. Mary,
Aye,
Brad,
Aye.
Dan,
Aye.
TJ,
Yes.
Pete,
Yes.
Diane,
Yes,
and the chair votes yes. All right. That's great. All right, well, we are now at 7:09. We have a little adjustment on the RDA schedule. We'll wait to 7:15 to get into it, but we're going to be taking 22 Annapolis Way first, 164 Boston Road second, and then Newman Road, Old Town Hill third. And this is where we normally have Sam talk about what's going on and all the good work, but I think we're gonna let her say.
I did have one quick thing that I wanted to cover with you guys, just because there's been a little bit of confusion recently, and I've had to kind of explain some of our processes to people. So just to get it out there, out in the open for people when they're watching later. So as far as our meetings go, we have two different kind of types of items that we can have on the agenda. We can have public hearings and we can have meeting items or discussion items. So public hearings are things like notices of intent, and RADs or amendments, full and official amendments for either one of those. Those are things that have to get legal ads. We have public comment, the whole 9 yards. We have to have votes for all of them. RDAs are not technically public hearings. We do need to have votes to get a determination issued, but it's technically a meeting and not a public hearing under the WPA. So it's very similar, except that it technically we don't have to open it up to public comment because it's not a public hearing. I think it's nice that we do because it gives people the chance to ask questions if they have any concerns about anything, which is great. Things like certificates of compliance, not public hearings, they are meeting items, discussion items, things like, you know, if somebody wants to come in and make a quick presentation about a project that they might be coming in with, or things like a violation notice. We don't have to take votes on those. We don't have any public comments from it. For violation notices, obviously, we might have the whoever the notice was issued to come in and speak and discuss the issue with the commission. But it's not a public hearing. We don't technically need to have a vote for it. An enforcement order, if a official enforcement order is being issued, we do need to hold a vote for that. It does need to be kind of validated by the commission. So we do need to hold votes for that, but we don't really need to hold votes for other stuff. When we do RDAs, we don't have to vote to close a public hearing first because it's not a public hearing. So I've had some people ask questions about the differences between them recently because things are changing a little bit with the new commission and everything. So just wanted to make sure that we covered that really quick. And obviously, if anybody has any questions about anything, can feel free to reach out to me, get in touch with me. My email and my phone number are all over the website in case anybody does have any questions.
Okay, so Sam, all RDAs are advertised, correct?
They are all advertised in the paper. They're advertised as public meetings, not as
Right.
public hearings. And under the WPA, they're technically not considered a public hearing. They're considered a meeting, which is why they don't have to get legal ad. Why they don't have to get abutter notifications.
It's sometimes referred to as a public discussion
Yeah.
in the regulations.
No, good
Yeah.
point. I think we'll still wait till the 7:15 because we've advertised it on the agenda as such, but no, good point on, we don't have to actually close a public hearing because it doesn't exist. I mean, I'd probably lean towards if there was a neighbor that took the time or a resident took the time to sign into the meeting. I mean, I think we'd let him speak just.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, I
out
think
of
it's
fairness.
absolutely worth it to have, if
Yeah.
people do come in and they have any questions about anything, to let people, because abutters can still appeal an RDA if they want to.
Right.
So I think it's definitely worth it to allow people to come in and make comments if needed.
Well, Sam, you've just shortened our meeting by 11 minutes, just by, we're not going to have to go through all of that, but all right, we're 7:14, we're getting close.
And I think if we don't want to wait until the end of the meeting, I can go over the change in the violation notice now.
Well, you know what, we have probably 30 seconds before.
All right.
At least according to my computer. I think before we let you get into too far into that discussion. We need to let you rest up your voice for that violation notice. This reminds me of elementary school waiting for class to get over, watching the seconds tick off. All right, it's 7:15. Okay, RDAs. So the first one is going to be for 22 Annapolis Way for work to expand a second floor living space on the existing structure. And I think Tom Hughes, you're making the presentation on this, Tom?
Yes, yes. And first, I want to thank the commission for taking me out of turn, and I thank the applicant that I bumped out of the way as well. So with the commission's permission, I'll share my screen. Oh, sorry, wrong screen. And yeah, so this is an RDA for an upward addition. There is a minor amount of work related to an entry that is it's proposed. You can see the screen here. So the property is located on the near the corner of Annapolis and Southern. It's a couple houses up. So it's right here. It's sort of the middle house as you come down Annapolis and hit Southern. Right here, it's located within the velocity zone, and the project involves an upward expansion in this area. And I'll show you the plan in a second, but we've demarcated a limit of work, which will have a like an orange construction snow fence around it. That's where the dumpster, contractor parking, any kind of material storage would go. And then we're committed to restoring any vegetative impact, although any such impact will be fairly minimal. This shows you we're located within the velocity zone. And here you can see the kind of goldish line here is our limit of work. Basically the only thing that is also labeled on the plan is a slight reorientation of the entryway, but it's really minimal. It's all within a developed portion of the dune. So we see this as really not altering the dune in any way. It's more of a protective RDA to just demonstrate that we're taking proper steps to protect the dune during construction, and that we're committed to restoring the dune once it's all done. I'll note there is an outstanding order of conditions on this. We have sent in the paperwork for the certificate of compliance to close that out, and that'll be on your next meeting.
Okay, anything else, Tom?
No, it's pretty straightforward. It's pretty simple. And this is sort of typically the way we deal with these projects that are upward expansions, where really you're dealing more with the impacts of the workers and the parking and the logistics associated with the work, as opposed to an actual permanent alteration of the dune.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very familiar with the property. I drive by it a few times a day, probably similar to Mr. Conti. The entire front yard is now crushed stone, developed. It has a couple of small planting areas, but there's really no other area on the property that I could imagine, because of the topography, where a contractor or a staging area or anything else would get beyond the front of the house. Seems pretty clear cut to me. All right, questions from the members. Mary, any questions for Tom on this project?
I just have two. One is was there any question as to whether or not the 50% rule would be triggered by this work?
So this has been reviewed by the building inspector and determined that no. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. And then my second question is regarding the outstanding order of conditions. And we don't have a certificate of compliance yet. Is there any portion of this work that would, once started, would impact the ability to get a certificate of compliance? Sometimes
No.
we need areas that are planted and stabilized, and then we don't want to re-disturb those areas before you get a certificate of compliance. So
Right. No, I mean, basically the planting areas were back in here, and this entire area was bittersweet, and we were not committed to taking that out. And in that permitting process, in the work that was done, they ended up deciding to take it out. So we took out a ton of bittersweet, and that was all planted as well. So we're staying out of the areas that were required to be vegetated. And frankly, until we close out that certificate, we're still obligated to meet the terms of that permit regardless. So.
Right. So I guess I would, just as a matter of practice, the commission has been hesitant to approve new work prior to completion of existing work. So it might be a case where, since the certificate of compliance has already been issued, have been filed, that if Sam has a chance to look at the site and it's in compliance with the original order of conditions, which we don't have handy tonight, that I wouldn't have any objection to going forward, but I think just making sure that is taken care of prior to issuance of the RDA would be
Right.
my recommendation.
Okay. And
I-
if I may, my understanding is Sam's going to be out looking at the site, I think on Wednesday. I know.
Wednesday next week. Yep.
Yep. So what I would say is, if the commission, basically we would not start work until Sam is satisfied after her site visit. But if we could go forward with this, and you could do a negative with a condition that, we not start work until authorized by the agent to proceed after her site visit, or something along those lines, and we'd be fine with that.
Mary, any other questions for Tom?
No, I mean, I think some version of that would be fine, even if we just held on to the RDA and not issued it, because it doesn't have to be issued for 21 days until after she has the opportunity to make sure everything is in order, and that we approve and issue a negative determination contingent on there being no issues with the order of conditions.
Tom, so the issue is probably trying to get a building permit to get ahead of the weather on this. Is that?
Yeah, so I would prefer a condition that put the hands of a start in the agent's hands, and got the clock started on the appeal period. Even though technically we can proceed at risk under an RDA, I would generally prefer to let that appeal period run. So if we could fashion a condition, I think that's the best course. And then, if Sam's not happy, then we're just in with your next meeting to resolve any issues with the COC, but I don't really see that there would be any.
So Tom, you're coming in on October 18th for the COC?
Yes.
Okay, Mary, any other questions?
That's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mary. Brad, any questions?
Mr. Chair, I think I echo Mary's concern, and just from a procedural perspective, I think that this is premature until a current certificate of compliance is issued. I don't think that we should even consider it until it is. That's just my opinion. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Brad. So Brad, just for clarity, you don't have an issue with issuing a negative determination on the scope of work. It's just the timing to follow the issuance of a certificate of compliance, just so I'm clear.
You are.
Okay, thank you. Dan, any questions for Tom on this one?
No questions.
Thank you, Dan. TJ, any questions?
No questions.
Okay, Pete, any questions?
No questions, thanks.
Diane, any questions for Tom?
No.
Okay, so what I'm looking at, and I guess it's probably being the contractor nature of me, the 21-day start is from when we issue this. This is a project, I'm assuming, Tom, they're trying to get done this calendar year before the weather changes.
Yeah, it's a combination of that, and they have a contractor lined up. And in today's environment, if the schedule slips too long, you lose the contractor and you have to wait out the next job. So, as I said, I recognize the concerns of some of the commission members, and I think that there's a way of fashioning a condition that, if Sam is 100% satisfied, we can start, and if not, we're back at the next meeting. But at least the appeal period runs, as soon as she's able to issue the decision.
Okay, Sam, any comments on your part?
No, I am all set.
Okay, team, we've heard what Tom has asked for. I think Mary has made some valid points. I guess the only thing I'm looking at is a negative determination basically says we don't have jurisdiction on what they're proposing, where it doesn't impact any of the resource in the staging areas are already disturbed, developed land with crushed stone or gravel. I guess I'm probably not as concerned waiting for the certificate of compliance, but that's just my thought on this. What's our pleasure? Do we have a motion, or do we want to entertain moving this with a condition that Sam has an administrative ability to issue? Or do we want to just continue this to the October 18th meeting and address both matters at the same time? I guess those are the options that I see.
Yeah, and if I could just add that it's a 10-day appeal period, not 21 days. So from the date that we issue, it's 10 business days. So it's not quite as long as the 21 days. And I just think we need to be careful in setting precedents and allowing work to occur prior to without other orders outstanding. So if we can do it in a way that covers ourselves and doesn't put all the burden on Sam if there's a problem, then I'm comfortable going ahead.
Okay, well, I'm going to refer back to Sam then. Sam, is there some mechanism that you're comfortable with to consider? I think at our previous meeting, we were very concerned about whatever our practice has been in the past, not varying from it. And again, that was on the removal of walkways in the marsh over the winter. And we didn't want to set a new precedent on that. So Sam, any further comments from you on this?
Right. So, I mean, I know in the past we've done things both ways, I think. Actually, I think the couple times that this has happened, it's usually the certificate of compliance comes up in the same meeting and I've already done an inspection. So, I mean, I'm not entirely uncomfortable with you guys voting on the issuance of a determination tonight and waiting to actually, so like Mary said, the 10-day appeal period is from the date that I actually physically issue the paperwork. The 21 days is that from the date that you guys vote on it. So if you guys vote on it tonight, I have 21 calendar days to produce the paperwork. So, I mean, we would certainly be, I wouldn't be entirely uncomfortable with it if you guys voted on it tonight. And then I can just wait to actually issue the determination until next Wednesday when I'm able to get out there and do the inspection.
And that sort of presupposes that we're going to vote at the next meeting to approve.
Right. That's the only real issue that.
Yeah.
Hey,
And we
Diane.
have Brad and Diane
Yeah,
both have
Diane,
their.
you look like you were, Diane?
Yeah.
What's
Yeah,
your
hi.
thoughts on this?
I just had a question. When did they complete the work that they're waiting for their certificate of completion?
So the work was completed back in 2020, and we were about to file for the certificate of compliance. And then the concept of doing some additional work on the house came up. And of course, we were reeling with the second round of COVID at the time, and it sort of got put on the wayside, thinking that we might amend that earlier decision to incorporate this. And then by the time they were ready to go forward, it was really too far past the issuance of that old order to consider amending it to do this project. So we got the RDA in, and I had the surveyor make sure and confirm that nothing had changed since he had written that letter in 2020 and done the as-built plan before I could submit the COC. I didn't want to submit something that, while it had 2020 dates on it, was out of date in terms of its compliance with the order. So it took a little bit of time to do that, which is why it came in today.
Okay. Brad, you have your hands, you have a question?
Yeah, yes, Mr. Chairman. So just for the hypothetical, what happens if we approve this conditionally tonight and we decide on the 18th not to approve the certificate of compliance? I think we are just procedurally putting the cart before the horse. And I agree that the construction world is very dynamic right now, and the weather here in New England is also very dynamic. And I feel for the applicant because time is of the essence with any real estate endeavor. However, I think it's incumbent upon us to follow our own processes. And if it says that we should not be even considering something like this until that property has a certificate of compliance from previous orders of conditions, I think we need to stick to our guns. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you.
If I can answer that, the order of conditions is on file at the Registry of Deeds against the property. And no matter what you vote on this RDA, the applicant is bound to comply with that order in order to get the certificate signed off on. So even if you approve this, they are separable, and there's nothing that prohibits you from issuing an RDA while an order of conditions is outstanding on a property. So the work that was done was in compliance with that earlier permit, so I'm really not worried about the risk, but they are separable. And if you vote to deny it on the 18th, that would obviously be for some reason. And the applicant would then be bound to correct whatever that issue was in order to get the certificate and remove the lien that the order of conditions essentially places on the property. So I do think that there's the happy medium is to vote to approve the RDA, but ask the agent to hold issuance until she's satisfied that she'll be recommending you issue a certificate. Because I would think if your agent is going to recommend that would be the course the commission is likely to proceed on.
Okay, Tom, let me just jump in here. My sense is the commission is hesitant to do that, and that we're more likely to want to continue this to the 18th and address both matters at the same time. Brad, your hand's up again.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I was just wanting to comment on the applicant's comments about that. We understand the order conditions go with the property and are linked to their completion. However, we're making an awful lot of assumptions here, Mr. Chair, and this is not the way that the railroad should be run, on assuming that we aren't going to approve something based on the timing of this whole application.
So, Brad, just so I have a consensus from you, you're thinking continuing this to October 18th to the next meeting and addressing this in unison with the COC.
If that's the applicant's desire, yes.
Okay, thank you. Dan?
Yeah, just another variable might be to just approve the RDA or issue a negative determination conditional upon receipt of the certificate of compliance. I mean, that would give the applicant some assurance that, you know, the approval was there, but it would get get us into a more secure time frame. I think if this was a new order of conditions, a new notice of intent, that we would not issue an order of conditions until the old permit was satisfied. That's just my take on it. Thank you.
All right. So Dan, just to clarify, you're recommending that we issue a negative finding conditioned to the issuance of a certificate of compliance. Is that,
I think it's another way of doing things. It may not make the applicant quite as content, but you know,
yeah,
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, actually, that would
but
actually. solve
Tom, please, Tom,
Yep.
I'll get back to you. Let me talk to the members first. TJ, what are your thoughts?
I like I understand what Brad is saying and Mary is saying, and I agree with them wholeheartedly. But I like what Dan just proposed, because that doesn't trigger the acceptance or the negative determination until that order of condition is met. Is that correct?
Well, the negative finding would be conditioned to another act, which would be
That's
the
correct.
issuance.
So it would,
Of
the
a
clock wouldn't start,
COC.
the appeal clock doesn't start until that condition is met at that point.
Yeah, what's your thought on that, Mary? Does that,
Yeah,
Am
so
I-
we can't condition an RDA that way. We can't
Okay.
create a
Yeah,
condition
okay.
that requires
Yeah.
another permit. What we'll do, it'll just get gummed up
Bar-
at DEP and they'll intervene. So you want to keep a clean RDA and not highlight that it's conditioned on something else. So I think, I think the only reasonable thing, and I understand it's an RDA and not an order of conditions that you're being asked for tonight, but still, I think that proper procedure would be to just we can do them simultaneously at the next meeting and issue the RDA the next day. So that
okay.
would be my recommendation.
Tom, I think you've got the consensus from the members.
All right,
Do you-
well, given that, I know it's not a hearing, but I'll ask to continue the agenda item to your next hearing. If we can be at the beginning of the meeting, that would be.
Yeah, we'll give you a priority. We'll be number one on that as well, Tom.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Tom. All
Thank you.
right, the next RDA is 164 Boston Road for work to remove dead and hazardous trees in a buffer zone. Sam, you want to give us a quick recap?
Yes, so this is, Martha's got a couple, quite a few dead and hazardous trees on her property. I have gone out and taken a look at them with her. They are all, in fact, quite dead or quite on their way to being very dead. And a number of them have a very good possibility of, especially with a lot of the strong winds and rain and whatnot that we've been getting recently, that they could pose a pretty significant hazard to power lines and to some structures on her property. So, and Martha, I don't know if you want to pull those up or if you want me to.
Actually, if you can, that would be great. I've got the plan here, but if
Yeah.
you've got the whole package.
Yeah, I'm not sure it's actually necessary, Martha or Samantha, unless
Okay.
other members want to see it. I mean, certainly, I value your observations in the field. Does anyone actually want to see the pictures, or is Sam's representation sufficient for us? Just raise your hand there.
They were in the Dropbox, so I've seen them.
Okay. Mary, what would you like?
I was just gonna ask if how close they are to wetlands and whether or not the stumps are being removed or are they being ground, or how you're handling that. Just the proximity to wetlands and that are my only question.
So the ones that, the majority are in the lawn area, and I can pull up that plan if you'd like to see it. So the intention is to remove those and grind those stumps. There are some that are right on the edge of the wetlands, and the stumps would remain in place.
Okay, any other questions, Mary?
No, thank you.
Okay, Mary, would you like Martha to pull the plan up just for? a
No,
quick
that's
peek?
fine, thanks. I
Okay.
get the picture. I think I can picture where they are, Martha.
Okay, Brad, any questions on this one?
No, I'm good, and I appreciate Martha being proactive about these.
Dan, any questions from?
No, I mean, I have sympathy because I've just cut down 6 ash trees on my property, and all I do now when I go around is see dead ash trees. They're everywhere, and so it's got to happen.
TJ, you have any dead trees in your yard that we should be
Nope.
addressing?
All killed.
Any questions from Martha?
No questions.
Pete, any questions from Martha? You wanted to ask her a question, Pete. Here's your chance.
No, but I do have a lot of dead trees. No, no questions, thanks.
Yeah, we don't have that problem on Plum Island. Something about barriers.
Mm.
Diane, any questions?
No.
Okay, I have no questions. Sam, any follow recap?
Nope, I am all set.
Okay. Do we have a motion for a negative determination? Would
So
this be a
moved.
-3, Sam?
This would be a -3 because it is in the buffer zone, yes.
Okay.
So moved.
Okay, do we have a second?
Okay.
All right, all those in favor, say aye. Roll call vote. Mary,
Yes.
Brad,
Yay.
Dan,
Yes.
TJ,
Yes.
Pete,
Yes.
Diane,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. Thank you, Martha.
Thank you very much.
Okay, the next RDA is Newman Road, Old Town Hill Reservation for work to construct an observation platform and access trail. Sam, do you want to give us a quick overview, or is the applicant going to make a presentation on this?
Yep, so we do have the applicant here. So you guys might remember this one from a few weeks ago. Russ Hopping came in and did a very brief presentation, just looking for some advice on what kind of permitting to move forward with for this one. And we have Josh here to present. And Josh, do you want to share the plans, or do you want me to?
Yeah, why don't you share them, Sam, if you don't mind?
Okay, Josh, if you could just state your name and address for the record.
Josh Hassenfuss, project manager for the trustees of reservations. The address for this site is Newman Road, Old Town Hill Reservation.
Thank you, Josh. All right.
Of course,
Josh,
my
why don't
computer
you-
has chosen now to be very slow. Bear with me.
So,
There we go.
just while Sam's pulling those up, the plan is to construct a small observation platform. As Sam mentioned, Russ was in, I think last month to talk to the commission about this. We've since put together an RDA submission for this, and I think put together quite a bit of information for this. But the idea is to create a small, trail improvement from the existing trail off of Newman Road to an area, adjacent to the marsh, and create a wood platform, wood frame, wood deck platform on diamond piers at the edge of the marsh. And the idea is here to, allow our visitors to have a great viewing area of the marsh and wildlife. And Russ and another ecologist colleague have put quite a bit of time into figuring out the best spot, on our property overlooking Great Marsh to view wildlife, and we've identified that here on this map. We've done the delineation. This was GPS mapped. So what we're looking at here is the yellow is the proposed new trail, most of all of which is in the upland area outside the 100-foot. And the small section of teal line there, that's the wetland flagging that was completed, and the red arrow is the red box is the approximate location of the platform. So I put together a pretty comprehensive kind of project scope. But the idea is to create this trail mechanically to approximately the 100-foot buffer. And then, bring materials into that site on plywood so we don't disturb the ground with erosion control, straw wattle erosion control, and install the diamond piers and build the frame. And I don't really think there's going to be any impact at all, and should be a pretty nice project and get people out on the marsh.
Okay.
Can I ask one quick question, Bob?
Yes, you certainly can, Sam.
So Josh, when I went out there with Russ, this is the view from where the platform would be located, right? This isn't the platform's not actually going out. I know when Russ and I looked at it, it was kind of going back in
That's
the
right.
trees back here, right? Okay. All right. I
That's
just
right.
wanted to make sure because the wording
Yeah,
on that's
yeah.
a little
That
little
was just to show
confusing.
the commissioners the beautiful view, you know.
okay.
Yeah. Thanks, Sam. Appreciate it. Yeah, so the all the construction will be at the edge of the marsh, but outside the resource area.
Okay,
And this will
any,
be elevated, about 2 feet. 2 to 3 feet, I guess. But pretty
Okay.
simple framing, construction. We are gonna get a building permit for this, as an FYI, but yeah, I think pretty straightforward.
no, I think that you provided a lot of detail. I guess the only comment I have is typically RDAs are for areas that have been previously developed. This just seems to be completely undeveloped. Am I correct on that, where it's all still in an undeveloped state with the proposed trails going and the location of the platform?
Yeah, I guess so, in typically in other towns I work in, we use the RDA in these instances where there's, not any impact were expected at all in the resource area and, pretty low disturbance to the buffer. But, yeah, you're right. This is woodland. I mean, traditionally, of course, this was probably cleared and disturbed, at some point, but yeah, it is fully vegetated now.
Okay, let me, if I may stop you there, Josh, let me open this up to members for questions. Mary, any questions for Josh on this RDA?
Unfortunately, the trustees are a client of mine, so I'm going to have to abstain from discussions on this.
Okay. Brad, any questions for Josh on this?
Oh, no, Mr. Chair, other than the comment that you brought up on this, I second that. Thank you.
Okay. Dan, any questions for Josh on this?
So just because I can't scroll around here, is it defined how far this platform ends up from the wetland line?
I would say, we'll probably be 15, 20 feet away.
I mean, I kind of wish that was, what would 25 work? I mean,
Yeah, I think 25 would work. Yeah.
well, I mean, that's kind of like I think as long as we have a figure of how far it is from the wetland line, if it's 25 is too much, I could see going to something less, but I think that might be specified. Otherwise, I think you've got a really complete plan. And yeah.
Specify that as a condition too.
Well, this is a bit vague, and seeing 100-foot wetland buffer zone is a circular type feature. I don't quite understand that, but.
Dan, any other questions at this time?
No, I think we can probably condition something there.
Okay, TJ, any comments?
I was just gonna say that the line on the picture, has it been delineated to be the wetland line, or is that just a guess, or is that?
Yeah, so TJ, our ecology staff did do the delineation, and so that was delineated in the field, and then this was GPS located. So we're looking
Okay.
at the GPS locations.
Okay,
And just to remind the commission, in my kind of scope of work, I've specified, multiple site visits with the conservation staff. So I mean, we'll review all this before we do any work and get the erosion control in before we do any work. So
very good.
Okay, Pete, any questions for
No,
Josh?
I appreciate this project, and I appreciate Dan's comment about 25-foot from the wetland marker. I think that'd be appreciated. Thanks.
Okay, Diane, any questions for Josh?
I just had, when I was looking at it, so you're gonna be machine cutting in the upland, right? 6 to 8 feet across?
Yeah, that's right.
And then
To
once,
the 100
once you,
to the sorry, Diane, to the 100 foot. So my thought process is with the, pre-construction site walk, we would mark the limit of cutting. And the reason for that machine cutting is it's, that the upland area is pretty brushy,
and then I had said that even the area within the buffer zone was thickly vegetated, and you're gonna be doing that by hand?
with handheld machines, handheld brush cutters.
So who's gonna be, I guess I've become the maintenance person on trails. Who maintains that once is that the trustees, I take it?
Yeah, I mean, we're always looking for volunteers, but yeah, I mean, yeah, staff and volunteers. But we do realize that this is going to be, somewhat intensive to keep open, but we hope it's going to be very successful. And I mean, the concept here is to create something that's pretty close to the parking area. Not that we want this to be, an attraction, but something that's going to get visitors out and get to the marsh. And you think young families and stuff, I think this will be a nice kind of feature and give them an opportunity to go back and appreciate the wetlands, you know what I mean? So
Yeah,
that's,
so 6 to 8 feet across, even within the buffer zone, right?
no, we would narrow it down in the buffer zone, thanks, because the 6 to 8 feet across it would be on a track mounted skid steer, to the edge of the buffer zone.
Okay.
A mower on a skid steer, track skid steer, low ground pressure. But we would stop at the 100-foot buffer.
And then what would go down to?
Probably 5 feet, 4 feet, 5 feet, somewhere in there, As you get closer to the wetland edge, it does open up quite a bit, more tree, with less ground cover, understory, but I think our tread will be, finished tread will be in the 4-foot range, and it'll narrow over time because it'll just be foot traffic,
And I think Dan had said something about the circular wetland buffer zone. So the wetland in the middle there is the wetland that we're talking about. And then it's just marked out, that circle is just 100 feet around. And
Yeah,
that's the
radius.
only wetland. Okay.
Well, I mean, you see the white, the teal straight line there,
Yeah,
somewhat straight. Yeah, that was what was flagged. And then we created a radius around that. So that's what that oval is, that represents a 100-foot buffer.
So I think what the intent was to just show, kind of the wetland line, the delineation. What's that? Probably like 50-ish feet, so 25 feet on either side of the platform, just to have a more accurate wetland line, as opposed to, yeah, this is about where it is. And the circle was probably just I'm assuming that you do that in GIS, it just kind of populates like that.
Exactly. Yeah.
But of course, I mean, the wetland line, of course, does go all the way across. This is all marshland in here. So the wetland line does go all the way up and down, but just that part was the one that was located.
I think it was to show the extent of the buffer on the trail that's
Right.
going in, right?
Right.
I really like the project. I think it's a good project for the area. It's in the public's interest. But my concern is this sets a precedent where if a residential homeowner wanted to put a shed in a similar area and came in with this drawing, we would not accept it. And so there's a consistency I think we have to be concerned with, because if we go forward and find a negative determination on this, from my purview, that will be the new standard for future intrusions into the buffer. This looks like an NOI to me. It's a good project. I don't think it needs to be overly documented, but when have we allowed work in a buffer abutting a wetland without wetland flagging, without a survey, without the usual documentation that a residential property owner would be required to do. So that's
Well,
my
I-
take on this. I like the project, Josh. I just think it's not, I wouldn't support a negative finding on it. I think you need to file an NOI. But
If
again,
I-
that's just my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that. I could just add though that I think what makes this a little different is that it's for public use and I mean, really, aside from the cost of a survey and, you know, more paperwork, so to speak, our submission is probably gonna look very similar, and I think the conditions would be very much the same, you know, that's. So I guess, you know, with the limited project budget to actually do the work, you know, that's kind of the challenge there, especially with the survey for a site like this. I mean, you know, I'm just putting it out there. I know what you're saying, Bob, and I appreciate that and the precedent, but I think being a public benefit for on a nonprofit organization's property, you know, that's just, you know, kind of want to put that thought out there.
Yeah, I mean,
And-
if it wasn't in the buffer, you know what, this would be a no, you know, a no-brainer, but I just see this being the standard that we will be dealing with on all future RDAs, trying to avoid an NOI to build in a buffer. You know,
So, Bob,
regardless
if
of the
I-
public.
If I can kind of chime in on that. So unfortunately, the public use thing, there isn't an exception for, you know, whether it's residential or public use, but we have in the past, I mean, we've certainly approved of things that arguably have a more significant impact than some vegetation removal and trail construction in addition of a observation deck, and had less official information. I mean, we've approved of like pipe replacement and everything for, you know, sump pumps and stuff within 20-25 feet of wetlands.
But
with
that's
just
already developed,
GIS.
but that would
So-
already be developed. That would be a developed component that you are replacing or upgrading, Sam. This is
Right, but
completely undeveloped.
we've approved stuff like that with far less information than this. I mean, we've approved stuff like that with just like, you know, some GIS photos and some rough estimations of where stuff is located, as opposed to having ecologists that have gone out and actually.
Yeah, no, Sam, I hear you. I'm coming from a simple platform of consistency, because if we adopt this is going to be good
Delineated
for.
property. Wanted to add that.
This is going to be good for everybody if this is the course we want to take. So what's our pleasure here, team? Any further comments? Do we want another round of comments, or is everybody, raise a hand if you have a comment? Okay, what's our pleasure? Do we have a motion for a negative determination on this?
Motion for negative determination.
Do we have a second?
I will second, as long as it's conditioned upon some finite setback from the wetland line, 25 feet being ideal.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, roll call vote. Brad,
No,
Dan,
Yes,
TJ,
No,
Pete,
Yes.
Diane,
No,
and I'm going to vote no as well. And again, it's not for the value of the project or the limitations of it. It's just the precedent that I'm afraid we'd be setting.
So we do need to have
Bob, do you have
now a
Mary?
new, Mary abstained from the discussion, but we do, so that was a vote against a negative determination. We need to now have a vote in favor of a positive determination. Just to make sure we have everything official.
Okay, is there a motion for a positive finding on this?
So moved.
RDA? Do we have a second?
Second,
Second,
Okay, roll call vote. Brad,
Yes.
Dan,
No,
TJ,
yes.
Pete,
No,
Diane,
yes,
and the chair votes yes. Josh, if you get this back in, I just think we need to be consistent in our approach on these matters in a buffer.
All right, we'll get an NOI together and we'll get it to Sam as soon as we can.
Okay, thank you, Josh.
Okay,
Okay. Continued public hearings. 91 Northern Boulevard, a request for a minor modification to an order of conditions issued on 11/23/2021. Addition of a propane tank installation. Sam, that seems pretty self-explanatory.
Yes, so this one was an order of conditions that was issued, I believe, last November. For upward expansion. This is just the addition of the propane tanks, and give me 1 second. I can pull up the locations. This is actually a little bit hard to see now that I'm looking at it again. Maybe not. So the propane tanks are going to be located right here. And I think, similar to doing like an RDA and whatnot for similar projects, just to, have it conditioned that it has to comply with the appropriate codes. Actually, we don't even technically have to condition it like that. I know we typically do, just
Recommendation.
just to cover all the bases.
Right.
But yeah, just so this would just be like an issuance of a letter that just states that if you guys are in favor of allowing the modification, just be a letter stating that it has been approved, that they're allowed to do it, and just that they would have to make sure that it complies with the appropriate building, plumbing, gas codes.
Okay. Is the applicant have anything to add, Sam?
She was here and I don't see her in here anymore. So I'm assuming no.
Are there any members of the public that have their hands raised or have questions on this matter?
We do not. And technically it's not a public hearing anyways, so.
Okay.
I wasn't entirely sure where to put it because it's technically not a public hearing, but this seemed like the most appropriate place to put a modification. So.
Okay. All right, well, let's open this up to questions. Mary, any questions or concerns on the location of?
No,
propane
can
tank?
you just remind me what the underlying project was? The
Yeah.
50-13
So this was for upward expansion. And actually the homeowners got all of their permits from zoning well before I started. And then very shortly after I started last year, I found out that they were told by somebody else that they didn't have to go in front of conservation for any of this, which is not accurate. They were told that by a different board. And so they ended up having to come in. They've actually had some issues. Their previous contractor took the roof off of their house and then left it there and ran away with all of their money. So this one's been in the works for a while, but it was for an upward expansion.
Okay.
I don't believe there was anything else other than just the second floor addition. From what I can recall, the order conditions is in the file. I can pull that up if we want to take a look at it.
Okay, there's no place else to put the tanks, I assume, so this is, that's fine. I have no other questions, thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Brad, any questions on this one?
No, I walk by this construction area every morning. So yes, I'm very familiar with it. No issue.
Okay, thank you. Dan, any questions on this one?
I just kind of wonder what's the current, is that a vegetated area where the tanks are going to go? That, are we losing anything important there?
I
Or is that just-
believe it's just, I might have some pictures in this. This is the notice of
No.
intent, though.
Good
I
question,
believe
Dan.
this area is just, grass. Just like lawn grass.
I mean, it's not a big area, but if there's
I believe
opportunities.
this is, actually, is that?
I mean, I
now
think
can't
that's a
remember which side
legitimate
it's gonna go
question.
on.
What, if we have a vegetated area, is there some other place that we can request they establish similar vegetation to, kind of mitigate the loss of a certain amount? And I just want to say a little something about propane installations. Yes, it's a question of enforcement of various codes, including NFPA. And this is in the V zone. And I don't think in many cases that we're getting tanks that are secured to the ground so they won't float around, so they won't cause problems. That's part of the code. And I just see tanks plopped on a, air conditioner pad, and that's it, and so I'm a little concerned that the code enforcement part of it is not very effective.
Well, I think that I hear you, Dan. I think the good thing is, Sam, you work in the same office with the plumbing inspector, don't you?
I share an office with the building inspector, but I see Gary, the plumbing inspector, often.
Okay.
And I, with the understanding of what Dan is saying, I believe it covers us on our end that we're stating in an approval. Typically, all of our approvals, I state that the installation has to comply with the applicable codes. Unfortunately, what the plumbing inspector does or doesn't approve isn't necessarily something that we can enforce, I don't think.
Well, I mean, I
Or really
think that
have
if it's in the CMR for propane tank, which I'm very sure.
I
that it
don't
is.
believe it is. It's in I believe it's in like the NFPA,
Right.
the flood insurance
Mhm.
stuff, but I don't believe there's anything in the WPA or in the bylaw that states regulations, because those are all covered by the plumbing and gas codes.
Well, what would you do me a favor? Will you ask directly the plumbing inspector, have Peter ask the plumbing inspector for the precise wording of the CMR for propane tanks in the velocity zone? I think it would help. My recollection is it's a requirement that has to be secured, but be better to find out directly. A good point, Dan, and you're 100% right. These things should be chained down.
Particularly in the velocity zone.
Yeah, no
If
doubt.
it's still water flooding is a different thing.
Yeah, they all float, Dan. They all float.
Yeah.
Okay, TJ, any other questions, Dan, before I go on to TJ? Okay, TJ, any questions?
Nope, covered well.
Okay, Pete, any questions?
No, thank you.
Diane,
Nope.
and I have no questions. All right, so do we have a motion for a minor modification to the order of conditions issued on 11/23/2021 with the addition of a propane tank installation to be
Moved.
fastened?
So moved.
Okay, second.
Second.
Any further discussion? Okay, roll call vote. All those in favor, say aye. Mary,
Yes.
Brad,
Aye.
Dan,
Yes.
TJ,
Yes.
Pete,
Yes.
Diane,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. Okay, thank you. Sam, 330 Third Street, has that been continued?
Yep, we did get a request from Tom to continue this to November 1st.
Okay. Do we have a motion to continue the public hearing to November 1st on
So moved.
Second.
second? Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye. Mary,
Yes.
Brad,
Aye.
Dan,
Yes.
TJ,
Yes.
Pete,
Yes.
Diane,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. All right. Next order of business. Do I see Rob Rosen over there waiting patiently? 140 Main Street for work to construct an access road along an existing farm road with wetland crossings for utility maintenance access to an interconnection.
All right. All righty. Good evening, folks. Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. I'm Robert Rosine with Waterstone Engineering. I think you all know me by now. Here with me is John Cronin and Jared Connell. John Cronin from Cronin, Basinski, and Zelensky.
Piston and Zelensky, you got it.
All right. And Jared Connell from New Leaf Energy. Mr. Chair, what would you like from me tonight? In our last hearing, I gave a kind of a brief summary of where we stood with the submittals and all of that. That was a couple weeks ago. If you'd like, my preference would be to just do a quick summary again of where the project's at and what the recent submittals were about. In particular, the questions and issues that were raised at I believe it was the July 19th hearing or thereabouts.
Okay, I would agree, Rob. I would suggest there was additional information requested. I'd start there.
Okay.
And then we'll do a stop and ask questions of the
Okay.
members. And
Okay.
I think that would be the way to proceed. So why don't you give us a quick recap, Robert, if you can?
Okay, great. All right. Just to quickly recap where we're at, this is what we're looking for is this is a new NOI for an existing permitted project that was completed in December of 2021. And this is the final approval requirement from National Grid to complete the interconnection. It's a maintenance access point that was overlooked, unfortunately, during the original design and permitting, and was not raised until it was not raised by National Grid until they were ready to turn the facility on. So now we're back to that. We've gone through, and so through that requires a special permit modification, conservation restriction amendment, and a new notice of intent. So with that notice of intent, we're looking at approximately a 1,200 linear foot road with, if I remember right, I'm gonna get some of my numbers a little wrong here, but more or less correct, 120 square feet of permanent impact, 470 square feet of temporary wetland impact, about, I think it was 1,300 or 1,400 square feet of wetland restoration, and the removal of approximately 4,500 cubic yards of wetland fill. And so what this will do, we'll be taking essentially a 9-foot old farm road and widening this to 12 feet, and then removing a cart path across a wetland and replacing that with a 150-foot span bridge that will be outside of the bankful condition. So we'll be up and out of the wetland. And so Our last hearing in the July hearing, there was, and after our site walk, there was a request for a few items here, and the requested items, I'll just kind of go down my list here real quickly. There was we had some questions about a wildlife habitat evaluation and whether that would be required. And the answer to that is no. The amount of riverbank impact is below the trigger threshold on two levels. There are two measures. One of them was 50 linear feet of impact, and the other one was, I think, 10% of the riverbank area, of which we're below both of those. We have about 24, 24 linear feet of impact on the riverbank, and far less than 10%. So there's the wildlife habitat evaluation issue. There was the question about MEPA, whether we would need a MEPA review. And the answer to that is at this stage, no. MEPA will only kick in if an agency approval is required. So as long as we're just doing local approvals, then there wouldn't be no MEPA review required. And it's possible that there will be no, even if there is an agency review, that we still wouldn't need it because we're below the 5,000 square foot threshold. But of that last part, I'm not entirely sure of yet. I posed the first question to the MEPA folks and got the answer. The second question, I have not seen an answer back on that one yet. The next item was there were two questions about a spill response plan and an equipment schedule. Those have both been added to the current plan set. So the spill response plan kind of exists in two parts. One, it's in one of the sheets where we have the listed response plan, and that is the spill response plan that's part of the EPA construction general permit. Has a requirement for that in there, and so this presumably is still under the existing CGP. We have not filed a notice of termination on that. So presumably it's still under there. But in addition to that, we would expect that as part of the construction drawings and construction submittals, the contractor would provide an additional spill response plan specific to that. There was an equipment schedule. So for under an equipment plan, so that's basically, and that also is part of that shares the same sheet as the spill response plan. It basically shows where the vehicles will be stored and where refueling and maintenance will occur, and that'll all be in the staging area, which is at the main facility, not out at the where the construction would occur. We have a revised drawing set. With the revised drawing set, there were a couple of additional items that were added in there. There were road cross sections. So we have road cross sections, I believe every 50 feet. It might be every 100 feet. I don't remember exactly. I think it's every 50 feet. So we have road cross sections every 50 feet showing, in a particular, there's one portion of the road as we kind of come around the corner where we have a cross slope. Where you can see the both the cut and the fill that's required in the cross sections, and I'd be happy to review that for you folks if you'd like. We have the addition of inverts for two of the culverts that are actually within the wetland, the existing wetland crossing. There are two inverts in there that were added, and then to the landscaping plan, there was a bunch of items added specifically on the wetland seed that would be used, and on the replacement. If you recall, there's a crane laydown area that there will be clearing for the crane, and that area will be restored, meaning that the stone will all be pulled back, loam will be placed, and then we'll replace it with the number of trees and shrubs that are in there, and that tree and shrub count is listed in there and detailed. There's that item, and then I think there were then two other primary items that were a bit more significant. One of them was the wetlands delineation and reflagging, and that has been done and been completed. There was essentially no change. There were, I think, 2 or 3 flags that were moved, but it didn't change anything with respect to the impacts we're talking about. And then there was a hydraulic study that was done, and the hydraulic study examined changes, impacts that we would expect to see as a result of the road coming out, the existing wetland crossing coming out, that 4,500 cubic yards. And what you can see in there is pretty much what we expected, which was that Interstate 95 is the controlling feature there. It's not the entire reason for the wetland, but it is because there's wetland obviously on both sides of the interstate there. But it is the reason for the large impoundment there, or one of the reasons. There are two 36-inch culverts that drain underneath Interstate 95, and they're the controlling feature. So what you can see in the plan set is that that road goes underwater as low as the 2-year storm, and so it essentially has no impact on the hydrology and hydraulics, ranging from 2 to 100 year. So we don't expect that to change anything in there. And I think that's probably a good place to stop with sort of the high level summary. And then and maybe we can, I'm happy to pull up any of those studies or go through any questions on that.
Rob, thank you. Let me open up some questions.
Thank
Let me open the questioning to the members. Mary, what questions do you have for Rob? And did the checklist
yeah.
complete?
Okay, I note that we still don't have a DEP file number,
Right.
and they're waiting for a fee, apparently. So I think that we can't take any action, obviously, until we have a file number, and it's likely that DEP will also have comments. So I would suggest that you close that loop as soon as possible, so that you can also address any comments that they might have.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. The fee was supposedly delivered on June 19th. So it was issued,
It
but for
can't be
whatever
delivered.
reason.
It has to be sent to the lockbox address.
Yeah, I know what address it needs to be sent to. Yeah.
No,
and
no,
it-
no. It's a PO box, so it
Yeah.
can't be hand delivered. That's the problem. So
Yeah, no, I understand
Okay.
that. And it was sent to the
Okay.
PO box, but for whatever reason,
Okay.
it didn't go through. So it has been reissued and
recently,
and-
was that pretty recently?
Yep, we checked the tracking today, and it should be delivered on the 3rd. I think it was, no, sorry, today is the 3rd. It left the facility on the 3rd and should be delivered by the 5th. So it was issued on the 1st. So we have a tracking number and all of that. And once it's delivered, all that information will be transmitted to DEP, the tracking information, the receipt, and all of that. And we should have done that in the initial round, and that we would have caught that, but we didn't do that.
So aside from DEP, I know that you'd mentioned that it's been reflagged. So there are now new flags in the field.
That's correct.
And are they shown, have they been resurveyed, and are they shown on the plan with the flag numbers?
Yes. And that was part of the submittal package.
Okay, so because I must be looking at an old plan because I don't see that on here. Okay. And
Would you like me to pull that up?
I think it would be helpful for our discussion purposes if we did have the plan up. I know that there was a lot of discussion about the width of the temporary road, the construction width of the road that was needed to accommodate the equipment in order to install this bridge. And you mentioned that you've now identified temporary impacts as well as permanent impacts. And I'm assuming the temporary impacts are related to the construction and staging to construct the span. Is that correct?
No.
Okay.
No, the temporary, there's no impacts associated with the span. The impacts are from the straightening of the road in this section here.
Just there.
Yeah, just here. So the impacts down here are not, we're not listing that as impact right now, because that's the wetland crossing itself that we're proposing to remove.
Okay.
And so figure, we have not begun the Army Corps permitting process. Once we are reasonably confident of the design being permitted here, we'll begin the Army Corps process, for confirmation of that. And if there's any issues on that, I mean, there's kind of two scenarios that could play out here. One scenario is that if that's viewed as wetland impact, we'll just leave the road, because the whole point of us offering to remove the wetland crossing is that it's by the stream crossing standards, it would not be an allowable or permittable crossing these days. And so essentially the offer to remove that is to remove the 4,500 yards of wetland fill. If that's going to be treated as wetland as opposed to wetland fill, we would just build the bridge over it and leave the road, because it's easier to construct, and
Right.
and then it won't have any impacts.
But either way, I think you're under your 5,000 square feet, so I'm not sure that you would trigger any anything other than self-verification eligible with the Corps.
Exactly, and that's what I'm thinking as well.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
But I
and
have
so-
not connected with the Corps yet. So once that's there's definitely some assumptions going on in that one, and I won't know it for sure
Right.
until I'm through that part. Yeah.
And so then there's some items that need to be shown on the plan that maybe I don't see on this particular plan, maybe of other plans that highlight the temporary and permanent impact areas with the shading or something, and giving us the square footage on the plan, so we know exactly where those are being where how you're calculating those.
Yeah. Those.
And also are oops.
Yeah, I have to get too many documents open for my Adobe. Let's see, I will get you back. Okay, let me try that one again. So that's in the wetlands plan. Actually, no, I think it's in the layout plan. That's 8 and 9. Maybe it's here. So here it is, the 470 square feet of temporary impact, 120 square feet of permanent impact.
Mhm.
And I believe that's shown on the wetlands plan as well. I don't remember exactly.
Okay, just a little bit hard to see where the crosshatched is the permanent, and the other.
No, actually, the crosshatch
the other
is
way around.
is the low water crossing. The permanent is this area right in here.
Yeah, I think there just needs to be called out a little bit more so we can see it on the plan, the distinction between the, yeah, exactly. Between the permanent and then also, we need to have the wetland flags. There needs to be some context for this plan so that it can be taken in the field and used during monitoring and supervision of the site. So we would need to have the wetland flag numbers on the plan as well.
Well, okay. And we have those that's on the wetlands sheet. So that.
Right. So just putting those on this sheet as well. The information is just a little bit scattered around, so just makes it harder to understand entirely what you're proposing.
So this is the part that is, we say here, 120, 470, here's the wetland flags.
Mhm. Right. So that information needs to be overlaid on a single plan, so we can see that. We can see where the erosion control barriers are going to go, because they're not shown on either plan.
Well, that's on the erosion control sheet.
Right. So
I mean,
so I'm saying it should all be on a sort of general plan so that you can see how everything's going to fit together and that you're going to have enough room to do what you need to do to get your equipment passed within, with the, with the space that you're giving yourself on these plans.
Okay.
And you're looking for what's the width of the road for the passage of the equipment?
The temporary road is going to be, is 20 feet for the, let's go back to this.
Wondering if the cross sections, Mary, would be helpful.
So we have here we have a 12-foot wide maintenance gravel road here. We have the bump outs for the passing areas. Then we have the secondary hatching here, which shows the 20-foot temporary construction road that will be restored to the 12-foot access road. So the 20-foot is to allow the crane to get out there.
Right.
And then the 12-foot is the permanent condition. It'll be reduced and loamed and seeded back down to 12 feet after the cranes reduce or.
And the 20 feet is wide enough for your crane to maneuver through there?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's exactly right. Yeah, initially we had it listed as 12, and they had requested that we bumped it up to 20.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't want to monopolize my time here on the board. I know there were a number of questions about how the bridge was going to be installed, types of footings, and impacts during that phase as well, whether or not you needed to do any dewatering to install footings for the bridge, and all those kind of questions as well.
I thought we discussed that in detail in July. I'm happy to go through that again, because we haven't updated anything on the bridge footings or the construction. But yes, there's definitely going to be dewatering. The cut holes. Let's see. Let me show you here. Let's see. We are. So the wetland and bridge crossing. I think that's 13. So we have these are the footings. They're a bin wall, so they'll be excavated to approximately 8 feet deep. I'm sorry, not to 8 feet deep. They're approximately 8 feet in total depth, but they're buried about 4 feet. So we'll go down approximately 4 to 5 feet with a base, and then backfill with stone, and then the concrete abutments or the foundation pieces are placed. But given that we're expecting that we're likely to be below the water line, so with that there would be dewatering areas, and I believe that was one of the other requests, which was where the dewatering locations will occur, and we have added that as well. I forgot to mention that. So those have been identified here on the erosion control plan. This is the one that shows that the silt fences and the turbidity curtain, but we have the dewatering area listed here. So the and we've added notes about that whole process and how that will be done.
So the additional clearing that's needed to create the dewatering area is included in your.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, there's not additional clearing for the dewatering. It's just in the clearing area. It's in the existing clearing area. So we should have plenty. Well, it'll just be along the edge of the road. We have, because remember, we have to overly widen the road for the initial phase, and we have approximately, I think it's 8 feet on either side that we'll be able to work with. So yeah, there's no additional clearing for that. The clearing limits are shown in the tree clearing plan, which is tree clearing plan is 10. Yeah, here we are. Okay.
Bob, that's all I have for right now. Thank you.
Okay. One question I had, Rob, I thought in the field you were gonna have the 12-foot permanent road, but it was going to be expanded 8 feet either side of the road. And I'm looking at your note right there. Okay, that's at the bump out clearing.
Oh, this one, yes, that's right.
Yeah.
So it's 8 feet on either side, but in the location of the, yeah, this was I think this was another clarification note that you'd asked for, which was what the total clearing is. So at the 20-foot sections, it's a 36-foot clearing. At the 12-foot sections, it's a 28-foot clearing.
Okay. Mary, I think that was the information you were asking about earlier as far as, okay.
Mhm.
All right, let's, Brad, any questions for Rob at this point?
No, Mr. Chair, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. Dan, any questions?
I heard a couple things here I hadn't really heard before, I think. So is there a possibility that, given the response from the Army Corps, that you might leave the existing farm road, the wetland crossing? Is that what I heard?
Yeah, I think there's, yes, but I'm not sure it's just the Army Corps. It's also the Concom, you guys as well. It's just that what the way we're presenting this is that's a wetland fill area as opposed to a wetland impact area, and that's obviously an important distinction.
So
and yeah,
that it leads me to wonder if the existing filled area stays and it makes your bridge building easier. Can you have a smaller crane and less impact throughout?
Unfortunately, no. That's a great question and one that we'd thought of as well. The answer to that is no, because then we have to get the crane down in the wetland, or we have to get a machine down in there. To avoid the wetland impacts, we need a 170 foot span. So unfortunately, the only way we could do it shorter, a smaller crane, would be if we could bring a crane to either side, but we can't get NGRID to provide approval to bring a crane in through the transmission corridor. So we're limited just to approaching it from the project side, unfortunately.
Okay. Another question related to, same area is, did I hear you say that the filled area floods frequently? The filled tractor road?
That's correct, yeah.
And I was kind of looking at the cross section of that bridge, and I think you have, 3 feet of clearance from the water.
Yes, 3 feet from the bottom. That's exactly right. So let me find
that again. I would say I'm just kind of wondering if that's adequate clearance.
I know what you're asking, and I asked the same question, but yes, this is a great question. You're absolutely right. So if just to make sure everybody's understanding what Dan's asking here is, we have a water surface at approximately elevation 57, which is where my hand is here. And we have a road elevation at approximately 59. And then we have a bridge deck elevation at approximately 63.3. And then the bottom chord is approximately only 3 feet above the water surface elevation. So as a point of reference, the Interstate 95 is at elevation 64. So we're almost as high as the interstate, but the bridge is actually designed, believe it or not, to get wet. And this is a common piece, and it's why you use sort of an open truss style bridge, because it has a less of a face on it. What I mean by that is this section of the bridge here is, remember, this is the road, which is where the hand is right here. This is just the bottom truss. This section of the road, water can flow through. And so yes, at a 100-year storm, the deck is going to go underneath. And but the hydraulic study addresses all of this, and because it's not like a raging river, it's basically like a pond, And we've looked at the velocities of the particles. I can show you that here if you want to see that. Because I would love to talk about my hydraulic study. Be careful what you ask for. This is my stuff, guys.
Don't go over your 10 minutes, Rob. Don't go over
All
your
right.
10 minutes.
Trying to find where that is. Yeah, sorry. Somebody's getting a kick at it. I don't know.
That ship
where it is.
sailed, Mr. Chair.
It's
Yeah.
10 minutes per topic. 10 minutes
Okay.
per topic.
Here it is. This is what I was looking for. So these are the velocities for the different storms. And this axis is centimeters per second. What you can see is that we don't get it into erosion section until we hit about 15 centimeters, maybe 20 centimeters per second. We're all in the underneath. We're less than 5 centimeters per second. So we're in what is considered to be a transport and deposition area. So we don't worry about the bridge abutments being eroded. This is an appropriate use and design for that bridge to get wet periodically. Oh,
Okay.
I restrained myself. I could have talked more about that.
Is there any evidence of beaver activity in the area? And is this
Oh,
high
yeah.
enough?
Oh,
Is
yeah.
this high enough to prevent the beaver from using the bridge as a foundation?
Yes, it is. The big beaver dam, it's not actually shown. You can't see it on this plan, but on the erosion, in the hydraulic study, you can actually see the beaver dam because it's pulled up in there. This is a fairly permanent beaver dam now. It actually has trees and stuff growing in it. So the biggest ponding area is right here. And then there's a little bit of a ponding area here, and then there's ponding down here. But what you can't see in here very well is that there is actually a channel. So the river, the edge of the channel is listed here on either side. I know it's a confusing piece, but yeah.
All right, I think I've asked enough. You seem to have answers for all my questions, so that's good.
Thank you, Dan. TJ, any questions for Rob?
Yes, Rob, I'll probably ask you before Diane does, but once this, if it's built, whose responsibility is it to maintain it, and how will it be maintained, and under what circumstances will it be maintained?
Yeah, thank you. It's a good question. The answer is it's the exact same conditions and criteria for which the original approval was given for that access road. So it's essentially I don't remember exactly what it is off the top of my head, but it is. I think it's, and Martha might actually, if Martha's still on, she might be able to help me with this. I believe it's 8 inches of snow plowing, or maybe it's 4 inches of snow. So there's a plowing requirement based on snow depth. And this is actually the very reason that NGrid requires the access point through the customer facility, is that it needs to be essentially accessible 24/7, which is not what the case is in the transmission corridor. So it will be plowed. It will be maintained, access, essentially round the clock, and that's part of the maintenance contract that the owner will have with the maintenance with a maintenance operator. And that's actually listed, I believe, in the operations and maintenance agreement.
Right, and if I may, it is 8 inches. Anything 8 inches or higher needs to be plowed.
And what if other work has to be done in the resource areas? Will you have to come back for to see what that work is going to be and start all over again, or just?
Yeah, typically road and bridge maintenance does not usually require an NOI, but there is it's an SVN, a self-verification notice, and so that there is a form that you would file with that. But I wouldn't anticipate any of that because even the bridge abutments are outside of the wetland, and that was the whole purpose of it. The wetland span is 135 feet, and the bridge span is 150 feet. So we're outside of the wetland on both ends. But if there was work that was needed in the wetland, it would require a notice for this. Absolutely. And that would be the same as any culvert or any bridge in any jurisdictional wetland.
Okay, TJ, any other questions for Rob?
I'm good. Nope,
Okay,
I'm good.
thank you. Pete, any questions for Rob?
Well, Rob, I started my morning with you and I'm ending my day with you. For the commission's knowledge-based planning, had a site walk today. I was happy to report that the brush path was cut. We didn't have to wade through it and there was no mud. Everything was dry. And Dan, your question came up in planning about the bridge and water passing underneath it. So we're all on the same page. We all have the same question. Rob, I want to thank you for continuing to give this commission and planning the information to the requests that are being facilitated. So thanks.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you, Pete. Diane, any questions for Rob?
Nothing specific. I mean, I've reviewed your materials and really you seem to have every conceivable wetland issue involved here. I can concede my question time to Mary if she has any more questions, because that's, I'm learning a lot.
Okay, thank you, Diane. All right, Mary, any follow-up questions, or Sam, follow-up questions for Rob at this point?
I am all set.
I'm all set for now. Thank you.
Okay, so Rob, I think the next hurdle certainly will be getting your DEP number and any comments back from the department.
Brad does have his hand up.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, Brad.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Rob, just one question, and
please.
maybe this had come up in previous discussions, but there seems like there's an awful lot of work that's going to happen, awful lot impacted to get that crane down there. Did you entertain the idea of bringing it in by helicopter?
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, thank you, Brad, for asking the question. Yeah, this conversation did happen in July, and I did follow up with the contractor, and I think the simple answer was yes, it's a possibility, but that introduced a whole bunch of issues on its own. The two main categories of issues that we run into is one is as a prohibitive cost, but then the second, probably more important one from your perspective, is that NGrid would not allow helicopter near the transmission corridor, and that is one of the issues that we keep running into. Is if we could get access through the transmission corridor, we have a whole range of other options available to us, but this is not, unfortunately, it's not something that can be dealt with.
I find that interesting because National Grid, as well as Eversource and Northern Utilities, do use helicopters to inspect their transmission lines. So I find that an interesting opinion that they have. Erickson's Sky Crane could put this thing in and you'd be in and out of there in 4 hours, but that's just my 2 cents. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Brad. Okay.
I did have one other comment, Bob, if I could.
Yeah, certainly, Mary.
I see that Rob, you still have the 800 square foot of wetland creation that's proposed. I know that there was some discussion at one point or another of using the removal of the old cart path road as your mitigation for your permanent impacts, making the need to create new wetland in that area maybe moot. What are your thoughts on that? Do you still want to go ahead and do that? Or if so, is there a replication plan with grading and everything shown for that area?
Yeah. Thank you for asking that. I think the thought on that was that while we have a plan that could be executed for the wetland creation, I'm of the opinion that it would be more impactful than beneficial, meaning that you know, while we would be creating wetland habitat, we would be impacting upland habitat. You know,
Viable
there's
upland, yep.
yeah, and there, I mean, when we did the site walk, you can see it's a nice area. There's mature, tall, mature shrubs in there. It would be, you know, reasonably, I mean, it would be quite disruptive, I think, in there to do that. But so my plea to the Conservation Commission is that I don't think that would be that would be beneficial. That rather the removal of the wetland the wetland fill, to me, seems like the most helpful piece here, and that's our preferred approach.
Yeah, and I wouldn't object to that if you wanted to take that off the plan, just speaking for myself, that
Okay.
I think I would agree with that assessment.
Okay,
And then,
great.
Last question is just the floodplain. Do we have floodplain impacts associated with this, and have they been calculated as well?
We do not have floodplain impacts.
There's not the floodplain is entirely within the wetland here, or is there?
That is a really good question. I don't think we have floodplain impacts. I am 99% sure we don't have it, but I will I'll verify that between now and the next meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, Rob, I agree with Mary. I think that replicating wetlands and upland is more invasive than leaving it alone and removing the cart path as you've suggested.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
So obviously, well, why don't we circulate that? Why don't we go around and ask the members on that? Since Mary and I certainly, we have our opinions, but Brad, do you have any issues with not disturbing the upland to create wetland at this point?
I think the suggestion of not disturbing the upland space is a wise one.
Okay, thank you. Dan, what's your thought on that?
I'm in favor of just leaving it the way it is.
Okay, TJ, how about yourself?
I echo the same feelings.
Pete?
I agree as well.
Okay, Diane?
I'm fine with that.
Okay, well, I think you get some good guidance on that one, Rob.
Okay.
So our next meeting, I mean, I think Mary's counsel on bird dogging DEP on your file number and their comments.
Yeah, my apologize that we haven't done a better job with that. I just assumed that it had gone through, and we'll take care of that.
Well, because obviously what we'll do is we'll just continue this to our next meeting. But at that point, and that is, so our next meeting is October 18th.
And Rob, I actually, I know sometimes Jim Freely can be tough to get a hold of. I've tried reaching out to him a few times and I've never gotten a reply back from him.
Okay, I was
I
wondering
reached
if
out
you had
to,
either,
yeah, I reached out to Jill Provenzel today as well. I usually get good results from hearing back from her. I sent her an email this morning. I haven't heard back yet, but I'm hoping that sometime by the end of the week, I'll hear back from her about at least what the status is and if she can shed some light on what's going on and what else they might need.
Okay, thank you for doing that. It's great. And as I said, we checked the tracking today. I think the payment should be there this week. It's en route. It shipped on the 1st. And okay.
And did you guys, just out of curiosity, I don't know if you got my voicemail earlier, but did you guys look to see if the original check had ever been cashed?
Jared, do you know? I'm not sure. I think the answer to that is we don't know.
Okay. All right. Jill might know if that's the case, and if it was cashed, if there was no issue with the first one, they'll be able to probably send the second one back to you.
Okay.
Okay. So to do a quick recap, the only new
Mr. Chair?
item, yes.
I did have one other question if I could.
Oh, yeah, certainly. Go ahead, Rob.
Sure. So I was wondering too, Mr. Chair, if it would be okay if we could ask the board members to give their opinion as to whether or not the wetland, the cart path removal would be, whether boy, am I stumbling over my tongue here. The removal of the cart path, whether we would be considering that as fill removal or wetland impact. What your preference, what the board members' preference would be.
Well, it certainly wasn't there originally, so it's not natural. So, I mean, my humble opinion would be fill, but Mary, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, what does the plan say? That's the question. Is it shown as fill or is it shown as wetland? And if it's shown as wetland on the plan, was it flagged as wetland? That's the question.
Yes.
Whoever did the delineation, they counted it as wetland then.
That's correct.
That's a different story then. Okay, so it's now.
Well, that's remember the
functional.
wetland delineation that I showed you earlier. That was the only thing that's changed, and that was the same thing that we had in the it hasn't changed. It's been this way all along. So that's my point, is that the wetlands show coming right across the causeway, and if you dumped 100 yards of material in there, it would still be a wetland.
Okay, so I think the original delineation went along the edges of the causeway on both sides.
No, it did not. It did that up here.
We had that conversation before. Okay.
Yeah, no, it did not. It had there's 3 flags that have changed. This one and these 2 down here. So it was delineated across in both cases. So that's
so
why
were they able to locate old flags, or how did you, or were they just reestablished by survey?
They were reestablished by, so it was 3 instances. The survey crew went out and reestablished all the flags. Then the wetland delineator went out and verified all the flags and moved flags, these 3 flags that they thought had changed.
Okay. I see.
And then the survey crew went out and resurveyed those 3 flags that had been changed.
Okay, so then that changes my previous statement, because you can't have it both ways. You can't count it as removal. It won't fly with the regulators. If you're calling it a wetland now, you can't get credit as mitigation for other impacts by removing that fill.
Well, Mary, I'm not calling it wetland. I'm calling it wetland fill because we know that it was wetland fill. So
you're flagging it as a wetland, you're showing it as a wetland on the plan.
Right. So the question just is that a jurisdictional wetland or is that wetland fill? And
according to your own delineation, it's a jurisdictional wetland.
That's not how I'm presenting this. Because if I took 100 yards of material and dumped it in the middle of a wetland, that's wetland fill, but you would still have hydrology, vegetation, and soils. We'd have all the elements that would be present for a wetland, but it's still wetland fill. And so that's my position, and that's the position that we're going to take with a core. And again, if you prefer that we leave the wetland fill in place, we can do that. But I think from an ecological position,
it's just you can't show it as a wetland on the plan and then get credit as mitigation. So you would need your replication area that we just said to disregard, because there's not any way to offset your permanent impacts, because you can still remove the fill material, but it just complicates things. If you were calling this, if they had flagged it out separately as an island or something that would, you know, within the causeway, then there would be a way to demonstrate that, but it's just not going to get, it's not.
So
gonna
the
go through
1,500
regulatory
square
processes
feet,
there.
the 1,500 square feet of removal, or the
Mhm.
4,000 yards of fill removal. That's what we're saying is wetland restoration. You're removing fill, you're restoring 1,500 square feet or 4,500 cubic yards of
Yeah.
fill.
It's just complicated because it's not typical wetland restoration, because it's not, it is already wetland.
It is, but it's
you-
wetland
The
fill.
low causeway that's become wetland. Yep.
Yeah.
So it's now functioning as a wetland. So there's.
Right,
I
I
don't
mean,
think, you
again-
can get this project approved without replication is what I'm saying.
So to me, that's why the Conservation Commission should weigh in on this, because I would be of the opinion, my professional opinion, as a water quality specialist, as a wetland specialist, is that this will have a greater ecological benefit if you remove the wetland fill.
Right.
And
I understand that point. It just, we're only working with the regulations as they currently exist. So we can't create new categories that don't currently exist.
So
Unless
Mary,
you're filing this as a wetland restoration project, that's a separate category. You can do that, but you still have to mitigate for your permanent impacts elsewhere on site. So I
Mary,
don't quite see how this works.
so Mary, I guess my question is, if Rob, could you revisit the determination of the causeway? Mary is just citing, it's simple math. You can't get credit for wetlands that already exist by removing it. If it's shown
Yeah.
on the plan as
Yeah.
fill,
Right.
that's really all we're saying it, but no one's arguing the benefit of what you're proposing, Rob. I think it's.
Well, I
your
mean, what you're
plan-
asking, we can't do that, because the wetlands delineator is gonna say the same thing, that the wetland, you know, this fill material is the equivalent of a wetland, right? And which makes perfect sense. You put fill in the middle of a wetland, it's gonna become a wetland. So what Mary's saying then, the repercussions of that is we'll just leave the causeway.
Yeah.
And it's easier, and it's not an ecological, it's less of an ecological benefit. I think that's a I don't think that's a good choice, but you know, that's certainly your
No,
prerogative.
we don't
here.
want you to not do that. I think,
Yeah.
Well, how do we do it
I
then,
don't know.
Mary?
I don't know. It's, well, that's.
Well, so
we
Guy,
have to
let me
figure that out.
chime back in. So I think we're back to the original replication area that we were talking about. We thought we were doing a swap, Rob, where that the removal of the causeway was adding, you actually, it was a net gain for wetlands versus, and it eliminated the need for the replication. So
I think it's more than that, Bob, because what Mary's saying is then we're going to have 1,500 square feet of wetland impact in addition to what we've already calculated. So when I represented it as 120 square feet of permanent and 470 square feet of temporary, we now have to add 1,585 square feet of permanent to that.
Yeah, you don't have to call it impact. You can call it restoration. If
Well,
it
that's
is
what we
truly
have.
restoration, it's much harder to demonstrate it's a restoration project if it's already functioning as wetlands. So you'd have to do some analysis and see how well it's functioning. It did have sedges and rushes and things. I remember walking through it thinking, okay, well, this seems like it's part of the wetland now. And it was my understanding that it was flagged along both sides of the causeway previously. That was my recollection anyway, and I guess I'm wrong on that, but it just, yeah, you can.
I think the
still
simple
do the
answer is
work.
we're
It
going to
still
leave
will-
it.
you
We're
could
going to
still-
leave it.
Yeah, then.
That's the
then
simple
that's
answer.
the
It's going to
decision
just
you
be
have to
left.
make, Right.
It's good. You know, we can't get a wetland delineator out tell
Yeah.
us that it's not wetland.
Right.
But it is wetland fill.
Yeah.
And I guess the only difference would be if the Corps agrees with this, which, so I don't know where that leaves us.
Mr. Chair, if I can just pipe in for 1 second again, John Cronin for the record, and just
Yes,
impressed with-
certainly, John.
yeah, just impressed with the level of detail here and the work that you folks do. I've worked with Rob for many years on different projects of different scales, and I've been following this one for probably close to a year. And I just stayed in the background because everything seemed to be moving along really well and cooperatively, and that seems to be the case. I, as you may have noticed, whispered in Rob's ear and said, can you get some feedback on what's going to happen under the bridge? Because, you know, my mission from my client is basically, you know, we want to be cooperative, do everything we can, but it's really unusual that you have this very valuable asset that's sitting idle. We want to get to yes as quickly as we can and navigate that path. And, you know, it's been a struggle through nobody's fault. So when Rob talks about that section, you know, under the bridge, I get the technicalities and I get the balance between that and common sense. But if it's something that we have to go back and do additional work, do additional studies, or reevaluate other issues, provide mitigation, that just slows things down. So my preference would be to talk to Rob and say, leave it the way that it is as applied and put the bridge over it. And if you folks are good with that, I would say let's proceed and address those open issues, try and get the permit number and see if we can get this wrapped up in the next meeting. So that's just my sense of it. But from a layperson without your expertise or Rob's, you know, my question is take it out or leave it. And I think the clear indication is leave it or you have to do a lot of other things. So just wanted to get my 2 cents in.
Either way, you still have to do the other things. You'll still have to do the mitigation, the replication area, the 800 square feet. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. I mean, I think the consensus was when we were walking the property, Rob, that removing the causeway it improved the resource. And I, you know, personally, I think that's still the way to go. You know, I guess Mary's recollection, and Mary's recollection is usually pretty accurate from my experience, that it was flagged on each side of the causeway, Rob. I just think it might be worth the call to your delineator to just see if we're making
really
an
wish that
assumption.
would do it, because
Okay, yeah.
I'm afraid to say I've been through this with them.
Okay.
I asked them
Gotcha.
specifically to look at this area for that very reason, and it just
Okay.
the only 3 flags have changed. So
Okay.
just to be clear, we have no issue, I think, with the 800 square feet. There's no problem at all with that.
Sure.
It's just whether or not that 1,500 square feet is going to be, if that's going to be considered impact and you know, as I'm hearing it, I think that's what it's gonna have to be. So these are the original flags. It hasn't been changed on this set, and you can see it just goes right across. It doesn't run alongside the causeway. It goes right across the front here. Here's this is the bank, and then here's the wetland, and it's the same on both sides. I wish it were otherwise, but it's just not. So maybe I'm misunderstanding. Are we saying that we can have that if we do the 800 square feet of wetland creation, that everything else moves forward as proposed?
That's pretty good.
Mary, I'm going to let you answer Rob's question
Yeah.
on that.
Yeah, I mean, you have 2 choices. Basically, you can eliminate the restoration of the causeway and do the mitigation area of 800 square feet as you currently have shown on the plan, or you can do both. And by doing both, you would have to qualify that the work on the causeway is enhancement or restoration activities, and it doesn't count towards mitigation of other impacts on site. So you could still do it out of the goodness of your heart, and it may, or I mean, it's a little hard for me to say sitting here now, trying to recall what it was like, but whether or not that's a true how much of a benefit to the wetland that would be is a little hard to say. Clearly, there's some old fill there, but it's also functioning as wetland now, or it wouldn't have been flagged that way. So either way, I think as long as you do the replication and you have a replication plan that shows what the grading is going to be in your replication area and your planting and everything, then you'll I think be okay.
And there is a replication plan in the plan set. It's in the details.
Okay.
So we do have that laid out, and that was just and actually you can see where that area would be this area that would be cleared.
Yeah, and unfortunately, you got to clear some good native vegetation, and that's the downside. But that's in order to meet the regulatory requirement, that's what you'll have to do.
So for that to occur now, if for us to avoid that, you're saying we would need to have some study that would show that there's some benefit of removal of this. What does that study look like, and what needs to occur in that?
I think your wetland scientists would be able to help you with that. I mean, you could make a case that it's an improvement, like somehow or other you're going to create a better wetland than what exists there now. And you would have to demonstrate that through your design and your discussion about your restoration activities. But again, that's just going to be, it's going to be a separate issue. It's not related to the mitigation that you need for the project.
Well, I thought you said that if we demonstrate that it's an improvement, then it is related to the mitigation.
No, I'm saying, again, it's like Bob mentioned, it's a math question. If you've got wetland already, you can't count it towards mitigation, and you're mapping it as wetland.
Okay.
So there can be no net loss of wetland. So by removing this, theoretically, there's no change in the square footage of wetland on site. You have to, but you're filling in a portion of the wetland for the road and other places. So you're filling in, what is it, 120 plus 470. So you need only mitigation for 120 square feet of permanent impact, it looks like.
Already provide, right?
Is that right?
Which is in that 800 square feet. That's correct. So it's at,
Right. So you may not need the full 800 square feet. Maybe if you did 2-to-1 mitigation for your permanent impacts, you only need 240 square feet.
Okay.
So just confirm what your total permanent impacts are. And if you could just do twice as much to account for any failure, then maybe you don't need the full 800 square feet.
Okay.
So if it's determined, just so I'm clear, that the 1,500 feet removed is an enhancement to the wetland, no further mitigation is required other than the 800 or thereabouts that's provided for now, right?
Yeah, it's a separate issue. So the causeway is separate. It's a wash because it's already wet. It's going to continue to be wet. So it would be a wash. It doesn't count towards your mitigation.
Okay, great. Thank you for the explanation.
Sure.
Okay. I mean, Rob, it would seem if the causeway was left in, the installation of the temporary shoring for the sections of the bridge would certainly be a lot easier than removing that and then basically doing it as a wetland. So
I think that's right. I think that's definitely right. There's no question about that. Yeah, I think it would be a lot easier if we left the path in. That would surprise me a little bit that we would leave wetland fill where the offer is to remove it.
And you can, no one's stopping you from doing that. That's where we would even potentially encourage you to do it if we can demonstrate that would be a good thing for the wetland. So that's,
I guess what I'm asking for, encouraging us. We have a 240 square foot wetland creation. We can do that, but why not encourage us by through the cart path removal? And it is a substantial amount of effort to do that, effort and cost. It seems odd.
Mary, you're concerned that the department's going to kick this back they're not going to give credit for it. And the restoration would still be required, or?
Yeah, we don't have a category for what they're asking us to do.
Okay,
So you can still, this could be a restoration project all by itself, whether or not the bridge got put in or not. And you could still include that as your bridge, part of your bridge project, if they chose to do that. It just, we can't count it. We still have to do the mitigation that's separate from this, unless they change their delineation. So.
Yeah, which we can, yeah. Okay. All righty. Well, I think we've got that one. We've got that one. Thank you for explaining that. I think it's clear. So if I were to just summarize, our next steps are going to be, we will resubmit with, we'll reduce that, the wetland creation area down to 240 square feet. And I think we'll just move ahead with the design for the, as proposed. And I think other than that, I think I think we have what we need.
Okay.
Unless there's any other conditions that the board, that the folks.
So the only
like to
other,
discuss.
the only other thing that what I heard was the floodplain mapping.
yes.
You were going to check on that.
Yeah.
So now, just for clarity, you're going to propose the reduced wetland restoration replication. Are you removing or are you leaving the causeway?
I think the plan would still be to remove the causeway.
Okay.
Does that sound right?
Bob, Dan had his hand up for a while. I just want to make sure that we don't.
Oh,
forget
okay.
about
I'm
him.
sorry. I'm
Still
sorry,
has
Dan.
comments.
Yep. Dan?
If the causeway stays, does that mean there's no improvements to the culverts? I mean, those look like they're completely substandard.
Oh, yeah, that's an understatement. Yes. Yeah, no, there would be no modification in there because that we have to deal with wetland impacts to do any work in there.
Yeah.
So it would just be leaving that resource untouched. And I'm hearing over here that we don't want to commit to the or that we need time to consider whether or not the causeway will be removed or left. So at this point, I don't think we have a commitment to that.
Okay. All right. Well, why don't we do this, team? I would suggest, Rob, you ask for a continuance to our October 18th meeting. But I think the key is getting your stuff in 7 days before the meeting for the obvious reason. So we have a chance to review and process the information, and hopefully you'll have your DEP number and comments in place.
Sure. Okay.
Don't forget
All
about
right.
public comment.
Okay. Is there any public comment?
I don't believe we have anybody. I just wanted to make sure that we covered that, that we asked.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So we have a request for a continuance to the October 18th meeting.
Moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Roll call vote. Mary?
Yes.
Brad?
Aye.
Dan?
Yes.
TJ?
Yes.
Pete?
Yes.
Diane?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Okay, Rob, thank you. You've put together a lot of information in a relatively quick period of time. We're closing in on this, my friend.
We're getting there. Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for your time tonight. I know it's long, it's detailed and all of that. I really appreciate the thoroughness and we'll get there.
Okay. Thank you.
Just have a great evening.
Okay. Sam, that's the last order of business that we have before administration.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Sam, why don't you give us a quick recap on your enforcement? And you know what? I'm a firm believer. I'd rather be done by 9:30 than 10 o'clock. I think we can. Any other matters?
This one's going to be quick, I promise.
Okay.
So Mr. Brennan did reach out to me about this one. Unfortunately, he was unable to come into the meeting tonight. But he did advise me of that. So he was sent a second request to come before the commission to discuss the digging in the wetlands on town property. And like I said, unfortunately, he was unable to be here. So I did let him know earlier tonight that we would look forward to seeing him at our October 18th meeting. And hopefully he does participate in that. But we can continue the discussion on that issue until our next meeting.
All right. Any other communications that's come in, Sam? That
I don't have any. I do have one quick thing that I want to mention to you guys, but Brad does have his hand up.
okay, Brad.
Mr. Chair, what happens if this individual refuses to come to the next, the second or third meeting that he's been invited to?
Sam has been talking with town council, with our town administrator, and I would say if he fails to show up, if anyone fails to show up after a point in time, we would consider issuing an official enforcement order.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Sam, is that? I'm reading
Yeah,
your
that-
notes to me, so.
Yeah, that's pretty much the gist of it.
Okay.
I mean, I know that, and I'm fully in support of, you know, using this as an educational opportunity as opposed to an enforcement opportunity. I think that, you know, making him file a notice of intent is, I think this is something that Mary had said. I don't know if it was in the last meeting or if it was in an email, but, you know, making him do something to mitigate the work is arguably more invasive and could create more impact than actually just letting it go back to normal. Having him remove the stuff that he's placed in it. There's a fountain device that he placed in it to aerate the water that's now present. There's some piping that appears to be being used to pump water into it, it looks like. But I think that using it as an educational opportunity is definitely the best means of moving forward with this. But my concern is that if he continues to refuse to show up or fails to show up and also fails to advise us that he won't be there, that, you know, if we back down on it and just stop engaging with the issue, that, you know, other people are going to look at that and say, well, this guy was straight up digging in the wetlands on town property nonetheless. And, you know, they didn't even do anything about him. So what can I get away with? And we don't really want to give people that idea that we're going to stop.
Look, we're trying to communicate and educate them to resolve an issue.
Right.
But the old baseball analogies, you miss 3 meetings and you know you're out. You're going to get an enforcement order, but hopefully it won't come to that. And I would encourage them to come here and let's figure out a pathway forward for them to, 1, keep them from doing it again, and 2, not make it a bigger deal than it really.
And I think one of the other big things for him as well was that, and it's something that he's communicated to me several times, that he believes that it's unnecessary, where what he's doing, he did have good intentions, and I understand his intentions and I appreciate them very much, that, you know, what he was doing was a intent to restore the area and make it more habitable for wildlife. But I think something that we really need to get across with him is that even restoration projects need permitting. They still require it under the state regulations. And
he's not mowing the
also
lawn.
doing it on town property, which is a bit of an issue without permission. So.
Okay, I think, you know, we're looking at the clock, it's 9:23. Let me go around and just ask if anyone has any additional questions or suggestions. Mary, thank you for all of your detailed review tonight of 140 Main Street. That it gets to depths beyond many of our ability.
Yeah. Hey, no, that's why I'm here.
No, well, thank you. Anything, Mary, you want to add?
No, just on the enforcement at 195 High, is that something you can see from the street, Sam, or do you need permission from?
It
him to
is,
get
it is
onto his
not.
property?
I actually, I had to go into the wetlands to see it. When the pond is entirely dried up right now. There's, at
Oh,
least the
'cause it's
last,
on
when I
town
went out
land,
there was
you
nothing
go
in it.
Through the town, okay,
Yeah, but I went in through the town property.
okay, I'll try to go in and take a look at it before the next meeting. That's all.
Mary, Sam had posted some interesting pictures too, which,
The Dropbox, yeah.
yeah, very telling. Okay, thank you, Mary. Brad, any comments?
No, I'm good. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Dan, how about yourself?
Have a good evening.
You too, Dan. TJ,
Ditto.
well, Diane, oh,
No,
excuse me, Pete, Pete, I skipped you.
I was just really ready to give you a motion to adjourn, but Diane, I don't know if you want to say anything before that.
Can I,
Nope.
sorry, can I make one more super quick, I promise?
You sure can.
I believe at the last meeting, I had mentioned that I was starting to work on a meeting policy. I was starting to draft one up. I put that in the Dropbox today. I'm hoping that sometime at the next meeting, we might be able to chat about it if you guys get a chance to take a look at it, but that is in there.
Okay. All right, it is now 9:25. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Okay, roll call vote. Mary, yes. Brad, yes. Dan, yes. DJ, yes. Pete, yes. Diane, yes. Bob Connors, yes. Good night,
Yay.
everybody.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
good night.